Hi, welcome back to the second part of our discussion, and we are going to focus on platforms. Before that, we would have a short introduction from the panel, so we'll start with Dean.
So basically, I'm a co-founder of a company called Nuji, and Nuji is like your social wish list. So basically, you can save items from any online store that you like, and then you can follow people with similar tastes, discover things from them, and you can also follow your favorite stores. So as a result, we have about 300,000 products in about 20,000 stores within Nuji, so it's becoming a pretty large product depository.
So hi, my name is Andreas. I'm one of the co-founders of a company called LOOKK.com. And what we try to do is we try to open a segment in the fashion market, which is called emerging fashion. It's basically every fashion designer within his, let's say, starting from graduation until his very first 4 years. And it's one of the segments in the fashion market which is the most hardest to open for retail. And what we actually do is we help fashion designers to create an audience around them, like a fan base, and then help monetizing that fan base.
Hi, my name is Felix. I'm the founder and CEO of Stylistpick.com. Stylistpick is an subscription-based online fashion brand. When users first come to our website, it's female only. They do a style quiz based on how they answer this quiz. We match them every month with a small selection of shoes, bags, and accessories that are more likely to fit their personal taste. Everything on our site retails for the same price, $39.95. And so once a customer makes her first purchase, she enters our subscription. And then every month, again, basically receives a monthly customized, personalized selection of these products, out of which she can choose a favorite every month from.
Hi, I'm Nicola. I'm one of the co-founders of Covetique.com. We are a secondary marketplace for pre-owned luxury fashion, secondary marketplace for luxury fashion. So sort of a eBay meets Net-a-Porter. We're a sort of a hybrid marketplace retail model, so we are a consignment-based online store, but we do physically take items from all of the sellers. So we allow women to open up their wardrobes and sell them to the buyers on our platform.
So just to start, in the last decade or so, Amazon and eBay has been the two largest platforms for people buying and selling goods online. And there is a changing nature of merchandising, marketing, and how items are discovered on the web that necessitate new business models in fashion. And with new business models come new platforms for commerce. So what do you think are the characteristics of the emerging platforms?
I think there's a big gap with discovery, which somebody in the crowd touched on before. So, if you think of Google, Amazon, eBay, those platforms are really great once you actually know what you want. But the step before that, there's been a gap for about 10 years. And I think that there's some companies popping up at the moment who are starting to sort of play around in that area. And so I think that's probably where the next sort of platform will come about.
I have the strong opinion that platforms like eBay, the original eBay, like just the marketplace itself, or Amazon came off the need for a very generic model which suits a large audience. And what's happening nowadays, you basically slice and dice the market into niches, like in verticals. And for each vertical, there's an own space for an own marketplace that focuses on that, because usually supply and demand in this very niche has a specific need. What's also happening nowadays with the internet, which is highly interesting to me, is not only slicing in the vertical, it's also slicing in the way, for example, distribution is done, or how customer acquisition is done, or how payment is done, or all these kind of things. And this basically opens up all new possibilities for new marketplaces, and they can survive next to players like eBay and Amazon very easily.
No, I totally echo what Andreas is saying about sort of vertical platforms. So, eBay, as an example, is a pretty poor platform when you're dealing with sort of luxury end of fashion. So, in terms of really addressing where the true sort of seller pain point is, and being able to provide buyers with sort of the comfort they need when you're making sort of a fairly significant purchase. And we've sort of seen secondary marketplaces now emerge in sort of various different verticals, all of which have different specifics. Ticketing is a really good example. eBay was not the right platform for ticketing, so we saw a few ticketing marketplaces. And I think fashion is very much the next space that can sort of really benefit from a much more sort of focused approach to verticalizing the marketplace.
Yeah, also from my side, I think there are two fundamental weaknesses. If I just look at Amazon and the pull e-commerce model in general. that one, it's search-based, so and with search there comes very little brand loyalty and generally a dependency on Google traffic. Google traffic is expensive, both SEM and SEO, and you have a lot of traffic today coming from social. So in that sense, that requires a more discovery-led customer acquisition process. So in order, if you're an e-commerce company, you want to capitalize on that, you need to, in essence, create a different kind of onboarding process for that is also more discovery-led. And just looking at then another factor, these business models are all about choice, about variety. So there's a very high working capital requirement that comes with building another full e-commerce business, because you need brands, you need thousands of SKUs basically, and you need to finance that. And so push e-commerce and or a business model like mine, which is not based on choice, it's based on relevance. You don't necessarily need the same amount of SKUs, and that makes it leaner, more capital efficient, and that allows you to scale fast as a business. So.
Right. So maybe let's touch a bit more about discovery and collaborative consumption. Why do you think this trend of knowing what other people are consuming or liking or adding to their favorites, why is that becoming important, you think? What is the...
I guess one of the inspirations for why I did Nuji was, maybe 5 years ago. It's quite a bit of... basically, whenever I needed to discover new music, I would go to Amazon. Right? But then there'd be like a little thing down the bottom that would say, hey, you like this album, so people who also bought this album have bought these, right? And that's how I discovered all my music, 10 years ago. And I think the same sort of theory can be applied to different verticals, and there's no reason why that can't happen to fashion, and it should. And I think that there's some startups doing that now, so. Every
platform has maybe a few basic traits, which is following. You tend to be able to follow someone that has similar taste or interest graph as you, and then there's the liking and saving to favorites. So do you think there is any other innovation besides these follows, likes, and adding to favorites that could come up in the next few years?
I think loyalty is really interesting. People sort of talk about loyalty and gamification of commerce going forward. And I think that there's something in that, and it's something that we've just started to experiment with. So basically, I think people should be rewarded for visiting a store, online or offline, for sharing an item from a store, and for purchasing. And Foursquare started to touch on that, with restaurants and some stores and stuff like that, and it worked. And people really like that. And I think that there could be an opportunity for a similar thing to happen online as well as offline, but across those three things, because they're sort of the three main measures of engagement that I think consumers should be rewarded for. And I think that something might happen there pretty soon.
Any thoughts?
Actually, it's like two questions. The second question was regarding following and all these kind of best practices. What they are in the end is like best practices that work for like huge amounts of data to discover them, like to slice basically to the need and the interest of the user. It's a best practice. What I strongly believe in is that these tools, like there will be specific players and platforms for like making that a little bit better. Yeah. For example, nowadays I don't go to each media site and like follow each author I like. I just like get in Facebook the blog post by my friends they recommend. So like there will be like specific tools for all of these kind of things. And the first question you actually had was like regarding friend recommendation. I don't believe that friend recommendation is nowadays more important than it was before. I think it's more nowadays just more accessible. It's more easier to do, and it's more like transparent. And this is the same reason why like the discovery is changing, why people nowadays are less like more open to consume different brands than they were like before. Because now the whole discovery to those brands is by far easier accessible.
Right. I mean, when we're talking about these kinds of platforms, one of the key things is trust, and building sort of a level of trust capital around your platform. And I think the previous panel touched on it a little bit in terms of individuals becoming influencers and individuals developing sort of their own personalities, and therefore sort of a wave of followers based on we identify with this person's style, we trust their style, we trust their judgment, we know that person. We're kind of talking a little bit more about transaction-based models here and e-commerce, and I think that actually changes the game a little bit in terms of trust, because it's not simply about somebody who has a social reputation by the pure number of followers that they have. So you need to add an additional layer of really how you think about bringing trust to a platform where you're asking people to hand over money. So what eBay have done with their power sellers. Now, you know, we address it a little bit by the fact that we have the stock. So, you know, part of our brand building is that, you know, we are the go-to place for sort of high quality, good condition. We guarantee the authenticity of everything on the site, and that's a big problem for eBay. Even with the power seller and the power rating system, fakes are prolific on eBay.
Yes.
And so I think transaction-based models and innovation in transaction-based models really need to think carefully about how they bring and how they're, and I think there'll be a lot of innovation in how trust is measured. I don't think it's been hit on just yet. I don't think there's anyone in the market who's really hit on how you measure trust in a very explicit way. And I think that's an area that's going to be pretty interesting for e-commerce businesses and for marketplace businesses and platform businesses going forward.
Yeah, I think moving on from peer-to-peer likes to maybe something Stylistpick is working on, which is having the stylist as the element of trust within your site. I think you have moved it a step forward, and perhaps you could share a bit about that.
Yeah, so we're a bit of a hybrid model in the sense that we're both an e-commerce company, but we're also a fashion brand, a high street fashion brand. We're not a designer luxury brand, but we're still a brand, and we need to create that. So I think the way we see social and particular curators is that we basically from the beginning worked with a set of real professional fashion stylists who are, some of them are quite known, but all of them are real, genuine people who are very involved in our company and in our product selection, and that we make very visible. So we try to give the customer, for example, on every product page on our site, there's a quote, a picture, and style advice, and a bit of reason behind why a certain product is, for example, in a monthly selection of a customer, and it, just adds a bit more color into the reasoning why, for example, a trend or a certain style is chosen. So that is something we do.
I think then you, in this case, the recommendations of the stylist somehow has much more weight than the recommendation of your friend, in essence, isn't it? And therefore you become...
So on the fashion side, that is definitely true. However, I mean, we deeply believe also in friends' recommendation, first of all, of our service, and that works very well for us. So a large part of our customer acquisition is actually referral based, so customers bringing us new customers.
Cheryl, the most popular?
Well, yes, she is, but also, so the whole service in itself is being recommended by friends rather than, for example, a specific product. We have that as well, but it's more about, okay, you get basically professional styling advice from the site. You should try that too. So that is more what customers do.
How do you deal with likes and following for both of your platforms in terms of quantifying it, or how does perhaps the designer, how does he or she respond to certain pieces in their collection being liked and others not? Does that, what do they do with that?
We provide tools to fashion designers, like emerging fashion designers, and one of those tools is, for example, that you can show your lookbook and you find out which products are more interesting for your consumers. And we additionally use this data to make better decisions who we bring into the commercial aspect of our site, which is like the shop, for example. And what we found out is that the segment, it's very specific to our needs, but the segment of designers we're working with, their biggest pain point is not sales. Sales is the end result for them, but their biggest pain point is actually awareness, and basically connecting to people who like what they do, and getting more feedback to everything that involves risk. So, for example, if you do a new collection and if you show it, this very moment when you decide who you will, which products you will actually produce in which quantities, this can basically define if you will survive the next season. Because many designers try to only work with buyers who buy upfront and pay upfront, or at least dedicatedly buy. But reality is nowadays with emerging fashion that it's getting more and more long tail, and therefore they have to go more and more into stock risk. And so what we found out is that this data is very useful for them. Even if it's small data, but if you have to make big decisions, even small data helps you.
You Opposite problem. When I spoke to some of our clients, which are retailers, they said, sharing is interesting, that's fine, but really we want to close that sale. So how do you come up with something that closes that loop? Which is why, again, we're working on this this loyalty mechanic where we say, okay, you've got 2 weeks, you've done this on the site. If you redeem it now, you can purchase it. So we're trying to close that loop, which is extremely important for them because there's so many social sites out there. It's like sharing things on Facebook, sharing things on Twitter, but in the end, if it's not creating sales, it's a waste.
Yeah, but the difference, like your site from the point of view of like a large brand is a lead generation site in the end. Like it's creating a demand on the consumer side and hopefully like leads to a sale. And in our case, like it's a completely different segment of supply and they have like different needs.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, Nicola, are you working with likes and following on your platform?
Yeah, we are in a fairly big way actually, although for the time being we've kind of kept it fairly closed within our platform. So the way we thought about it was all of our sellers, we're connecting sellers of clothes to buyers of clothes. So it's, you're dealing with sort of pre-owned fashion. It's a very personal space and it's a very personal way of thinking about it's your own wardrobe, or there's a woman and there's a wardrobe behind every item on our platform. So it was important to us that we sort of really, as we kind of build the sort of awareness of consignment and how to think more smartly about your wardrobes, that we really made that connection between the sellers and the buyers on our platform. So all of our sellers have what we call their personal online wardrobes, because it's very simple. There's nothing sort of technologically complex about it. Chances are, if you have bought from one woman before, you share style, you're probably the same size, and you have similar taste. So you're going to want to be aware of, I liked her items in the past, probability is I'm going to like something she's selling in the future. Right. So we've implemented sort of a Twitter style follow my wardrobe, which is very simple, and it really is just that buyers can start targeting women of similar style, similar taste, and frankly same size, and sort of be told or be alerted the next time sort of they're uploading something new, be the first to know when the seller is selling something. And that creates a couple of things. I mean, it's really powerful, first of all, because as a buyer, you've obviously sort of targeted individual sellers that you've really made a strong identity with. But at the same time, from a seller, when a seller sees that their wardrobe has 50, 60, 70 followers, that's immediately an inbuilt market of women sort of waving a flag saying,
indication of demand.
Saying, we like your style, we love your wardrobe, sell more, we're here to buy it. So it creates this really great sort of circular sort of buying and selling relationship, which is really important.
I think it's an interesting point that the likes and recommendations is an indication of demand, and therefore in a closed platform where the idea is to close the loop and to close the sale, I think the like and recommendation does that. It indicates demand, isn't it?
I would somewhat object to that. I think one of the early statistics we saw here on the board was the statistics are about Burberry, specifically their most directional brand, and I think a very high amount of likes and also very high activity of those followers. And I think what you also see in fashion at the moment, that fashion is also much more becoming entertainment. Yeah? So you have something like Lady Gaga, running the catwalk and things like that. So I think if you do that, you're in risk as a brand of your show being perceived as entertainment and being consumed as entertainment. So you might have a lot of interaction, but like you just said, it might not always lead to a sale. And I don't have any data, but it would just make the strong assumption that a high proportion of the Burberry viewing is actually not converting into buyers. Yes. But there's lots of awareness, which is great, but it's not a good in itself for a commercial company.
But
so
but like in a very noisy space, awareness is always good. So I believe that of course like a like doesn't mean automatically a sale, and I believe that not everybody who views automatically will buy something, but they have currently they have a unique proposition to their consumers, and I know people who bought directly from a runway. And I know a lot of girls who spoke a lot about it. Burberry is everybody's speaking about it. And this is the awareness they create in a really, really noisy space.
Burberry have brought this in not just about sort of embracing online media and live streaming their shows before everybody else, but even thinking about the more traditional side of their business, their ad campaigns. If you look at even at the people they use in their ad campaigns, they're much more embracing sort of the kind of, I guess, mass market appeal. I mean, picking up Emma Watson when she was at the peak of sort of Harry Potter fame, and picking up Eddie Redmayne now, and he's kind of with whatever program he was on, I should know. But you know, they are thinking about their younger consumers and who is top of mind for them. So I mean, even the big billboards that Burberry are putting up all over London, you know, the younger generation are identifying with the individuals in those billboards as well as engaging with them online and with the fashion shows and the streaming.
But I think there's a difference between the likes and recommendations in an open, noisy space and on a closed platform. I think that's a decision to like something, let's say on Nuji, which is a closed platform, or on LOOKK, is an indication of a potential to buy, I think, because I was looking for, I don't know, laptop bags, and specifically I found some that I liked, so I put like on them, and that was because I had an intention to buy and I was looking. So perhaps likes and recommendations in social media in general might not be indicative of a buying choice.
Important if it actually creates sales, or if it's like, in this case, the more important thing is that it actually creates a connection between the consumer and the brand. And if this connection has a back channel and can be used afterwards, then it's a very valuable connection, because this creates brand loyalty in a very noisy space.
I don't think there's no doubt that interaction and engagement helps, but the problem is the attribution.
The attribution.
How much? Yeah.
How much does it count to close the sale? But I think it counts more in a closed space than it is out in the open. Does anyone have any comments about likes and yes?
Hi, more than a comment, probably also a question to Felix's point. I think trying to convert it into a commercial sale still remains the biggest thing on at least companies' minds, or you know. And I was interested in asking Dean, actually, for instance, with a community like Nuji, which is helping discover fashion. So if somebody discovers designer fashion and says, I love this Alice Temple dress, and you've started following it online, etc. Do you find that, especially in the current environment, it's harder to convert them into a sale unless there's a nudge or a push of some kind? Because there's so many curated places they could go to find, like I'll always go to Net-a-Porter and sort of lust after an Alice Temple dress. What do you do to help your retailers to, nudge into that sale, really?
You're absolutely right, and that's a problem that we had from the very beginning. So, especially on our platform, you'll notice that most of the stuff is very, very premium, and it's all aspirational. The thing that I've noticed with social commerce or social shopping is that not all shopping is social. So for example, I'm not going to share a can of Coke on my Facebook or on my Nuji or whatever, but I will share something that I aspire to own, and quite often I can't afford to have that thing. So that is definitely something that we're trying to tackle with the retailers that we work with. So again, this whole loyalty thing, this which is part of the reason why we're creating that, to try to make these aspirational items a little bit more accessible. At least in the longer term.
It makes them more discoverable as well, because there were many brands that I've not known about that I found on Nuji.
As I said, I think the most interesting thing about our platform at the moment is these 20,000 stores, and what I've noticed is that people like to discover these stores just as much as the products. And if you look at some of the stores on our platform, they're beautiful. Like they're these small sort of boutiques that you would never discover normally. So, if you're a boutique down the road here, you basically have to have an online store. Or if you don't now, then you will in the future. Now, how is that store ever going to be discovered? The only chance that you've got is Google. But, if you're competing for keywords on Acne jeans against, the ASOS and the John Lewis of the world, you're finished. You'll never be discovered. So I think that, coming back to the discovery perspective, I think there's an opportunity there as well.
Taking the discussion back to platforms, I like what you said at the beginning. Well, I liked what you said at the beginning about everyone's got their little niche and now there's niche platforms. I thought, wicked idea, yeah, that's good. But actually, having thought about it, I actually disagree with that, because when I look at you guys, I see apps, little pieces of a platform. Looking into the fashion industry, I came from music, and I thought that was a disorganized industry, but the fashion industry is the most disorganized industry I've ever seen. In terms of there's so much product created, there's so much copy, there's so much photography that goes, there's so much data that needs to be linked together, And I kind of think that what you guys are doing at Look, you have control of everything that's being created in your little sub-segment. That data is really powerful. Then when you add on top of that, like what you're doing at Covetique, like you've got the ownership graph. Like you've got that data and you're plugging in people to see like, yeah, I own that, and therefore you can rent that. And at Nuji, you're saying, you know, I like that. So you're kind of like, you plug in as an app onto that giant platform as well. And I kind of see what Pinterest were doing, and the Fanseed. The Fanseed came along, they're kind of doing the same thing as Pinterest, but the Fanseed, if you notice, they put that button that says, I own this. So they're kind of trying to build that massive ownership graph. And I was just wondering if you see anything else that's going on in the fashion industry where people are trying to catalog, because there's a huge opportunity there, right? Tons of, I could say I own this, this, and this. One click push to eBay or rent to my friends, whoever's around me. I just don't see. There's tons of people going around looking, clicking I like or whatever. But that capturing, what product is that? You know what I mean? Like, is that acne or is that something else, or is it how do you do that? And have you thought about that?
I think the app and the platform thing's pretty interesting, and we thought about it on a more sort of macro big level, and then it's a matter of sort of cutting it down a little bit further. So basically, in order, what we're building here is we've got a lot of products, we've got a lot of stores, and that is becoming a really powerful platform. But in order to get there, it needed to be user generated, and we had to decide what sort of data we needed to collect and how in order to build this bigger platform and the bigger picture. So,
to the first question, why not put everything together and make one huge platform? This huge platform exists, and it's called the internet, in my opinion. And it's very classic for founders to have the urge to do everything, and combine everything. I'm one of those, but it's the hardest thing to actually pull off, because you have to tackle too many problems at once and too many assumptions at once.
I mean, I think that's a very valid point. I think if you basically follow a niche strategy, you're getting to a smaller market, and in the end, it's all about scale. So, every one of us needs scale, and affiliate or ad-driven businesses need even more scale than brands, because they're commission-based or have a smaller fraction of the total. So I totally agree. I think the more niche you go, the more important it is to own a higher part of the margin in the end in order to justify that you're going for a smaller market segment. Otherwise, you need a lot of scale, So
I think that's right, but I also sort of disagree in a sense, because I do think you need to address quite specific pain points. I mean, as an example, we're in the sort of luxury end of the market. At the moment, a lot of our sellers, if you ask them to engage online in a heavy way and take photographs and upload, they're not sellers. They just drop off the platform. And so what we've kind of felt that there's a very specific need in our space to sort of, the seller need, it's a little bit hand-holdy, and yes, that makes it a little bit more logistically complex and operationally heavy, but it's what this market needs. Somebody made the point earlier on the other panel about fashion moves very quickly. Yes, it does. But in the e-commerce space, actually, fashion has seen very little innovation in the last few years. We're all still operating off. You look at where the money is being made in fashion, and transaction-based business models, and people who are buying products, they're still buying the products the same places they were buying the products 10 years ago. So there has been a huge amount of innovation in content, in discovery, in curation. But actually, when you get down to the core of where is the nub of making real money in online fashion, where are the pain points, and where is the innovation in the business model side, we're only kind of getting there now. And I think online fashion buyers are quite a conservative bunch. Despite what you see in panels, and when you get into the content space, you kind of move away from conservatism in a really big way. But when you're dealing with e-commerce, you're dealing with people who are sitting with their credit cards, transacting online. They're a conservative group of people. And actually innovation in that space is only starting to happen now, and comfort levels around high transaction value is only starting to happen now. So what's quite important, I think, is to keep a degree of familiarity around the platforms that you're building. And we were very, very aware of that in building Covetique. We're not reinventing the wheel in terms of what we're doing. We look like a fairly standard e-commerce site. But we're different because we're creating the consignment model, and that's quite new, and there's a whole piece of education we need to do around that. And while we're kind of creating that market and educating the market on how to think differently about engaging, we want them with their credit cards buying online, and we want them sitting there kind of being handheld, frankly, to sell online if that's what it takes. And so I think you've just got to be aware that in the e-commerce space, yes, it can be very exciting to get caught up in this wave of innovation and all the great things that are happening in fashion, but really when you look to the money and you look to what's working and what's not working, it's only starting to get exciting now, and you need to stick to what's working for the time being and then evolve that with your customers.
One of the really interesting things from our point of view is focus. So basically, if you're not focused, you're in a bit of trouble, especially at an early stage company. You don't have the resources to do everything. And if you try to do everything, you're going to do everything badly. And if you look at the most successful companies in the world, Apple, Facebook, Google, Twitter, they all started off with one sort of proposition that they focused on. And because of that, they honed in on that and did it the best out of anybody. And then they were able to expand slowly. And now, how many things is Google doing? They're doing everything. But they did one thing really, really well.
Maybe just to add on what Nicola said, and I think you described the issue very well. And from my perspective, why there is actually very little innovation around e-commerce models, transaction-based e-commerce model, is that it requires very different skill sets, very different pieces of elements, and it requires someone to connect that, because you have a fashion element, which is very important to if you want to do anything in fashion e-commerce. But there's also a very hard online marketing skill set, a fulfillment and operations skill set, a managerial skill set, a capital requirement, which you need to connect. And essentially, there are very few people who basically can do that, who have all these viewpoints and who are kind of equally good at all these different areas, and who are then in a way able to kind of come up with something new. And that is very challenging. I think you see a lot of really interesting innovation points around various aspects, whatever it is, along the kind of different issues that e-commerce faces, but it's kind of hard to innovate everything at the same time. So I think your point, looking at all the different aspects of what is working and connecting that to something new, that's probably a very good starting point if you want to do something new.
We operated the luxury end of the market, and I do think it's probably different for at different levels of the market, but I don't know what the answer is. I'd be really interested in truly understanding, if you really look into, take Net-a-Porter as an example, if you really looked into their customer base and the women and men now that are driving their $100 million in revenues, what are they doing online? I mean, that would be fascinating information. How much are they engaging with Facebook? How much? What are they doing? I mean, I don't know if anyone else here has the answer. I'd be really interested in hearing that. But what are they doing online?
Yeah. Exactly. These are the customers. These are the people that are really wanting to shop online. These are ultra affluent people, quite young. A lot of them are making a lot of money online, and they want to do everything online. And a lot of the time, it's brands and retailers that are holding them back. But Google Ultra Affluent Study, really interesting read for anyone that's looking to play in the luxury sector.
If I just continue on that, I think then the reason why Net-a-Porter is successful would be so successful is simply accessibility, because Net-a-Porter actually has the products. That would basically then mean that all the curation they do, their magazine doesn't get them anywhere, but it's only having the stock available, if I follow that logic.
One of the platforms that seem to be very successful right now is members-only discounted sales, and I think they address a certain segment of the market for one, and they address the need for retailers to get rid of stock at the end of the season. So why do you think that this platform or this way of selling is working so well, and what are people rushing into? Perhaps for you.
I mean, I don't want to be controversial, but I don't think we've really seen any private sale businesses be terribly successful yet in the UK. It's the luxury end of the market. A little bit more so in the mass market and in other verticals. We're seeing it working well in homewares, and we're seeing it working well in other verticals. I don't fully know the answer. I think some of it is because brands are, I mean, the private sale business was built on the idea of sample sales, and sample sales came from sort of designers needing to get rid of sort of end of season stuff, and giving access to their brand and to their items to sort of a wider audience. I think brands are probably still quite nervous. They're not being terribly open about how they behave online. Dropship in that space doesn't really work in the UK, and that's what kind of worked outside of the UK, because that's what made the model so attractive outside of the UK. These businesses didn't have to hold stock. But when you've got, you know, Topshop, ASOS, or Net-a-Porter who can drop a dress on your on your desk the next morning, it becomes a harder sell to try and say, well, you know, it's worth kind of buying here for the discount, you know, when you have to kind of wait. Kokoza has been the only one that's really made a mark here, but they've just opened up their platform and they're moving away from flash sale and into direct retail. So I don't know what that says about it, but it's just interesting that, you know, there's been, I think it's a mixed model, but, you know, I might be being controversial.
Most of the brands here in fashion would rather burn the stuff than see it go anywhere near an excess channel.
High-end brands, yeah.
Yeah. Vivian Westwood's not selling her stuff through.
No.
Yes, she is. Is she?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where does she sell it then?
She's selling it.
She sells it in her own store. She sells it to department stores. They manufacture.
But Kokoza have taken away their membership and they've opened it up now, and they're moving from flash sale to direct retail.
All of them are going to do that.
I think every single flash sale site that we've seen has done that.
Yeah, but what does that say though about sort of the sustainability of flash sale online? I just don't. The answer is be a direct retailer.
So actually, you're not being controversial.
Yeah, good. Glad the room agrees.
There is a market for, you know, aspirational luxury, which is that the need to consume luxury at a lower price to be able to experience it. And I think the flash sales definitely started that revolution. The gilt definitely started that revolution. You could now wear a Vivienne Westwood or a Red Label for much less than that. And I think, you know, you're right about the UK market, and I think, you know, different markets have different dynamics. And I do think flash sales are hugely successful in the US. They have built a market, and I think, you know, we've spoken about this before, but it's yet to be seen whether they will be the future forever. But I do think it does point to a very interesting sort of need in the market of people wanting to consume luxury at a slightly more different price point, which is, you know, which is where our company, or, you know, a couple of startups in the dress hire space come from. And that's what, you know, we are trying to get to even Dean's point earlier, that women want to consume luxury or experience it early on in the journey for not £600. And it's interesting. Maybe flash sales will evolve into something else. Who knows?
About the dress hire space, what are you seeing in the market at the moment, and what are you working on?
Look, I mean, I just have been following, because the platforms have been talking about collaborative consumption. For us, this is a really, really interesting space. All the different platforms are, and I think from a consumer point of view, this is a way of consuming fashion and discovering fashion in a totally different way. And when people go and discover fashion online on Pinterest and say, I love this Temperley dress for £1,000, I think models like ours are opportunities to help Temperley get a consumer to experience it, a completely new consumer that never would have otherwise. And it's sort of, you know, you can argue it's a try before you buy for some women. You can argue it's a completely new world for some of these high-end luxury brands. So that's exactly where I think we come from.
You work directly with the brands, and or you have to take the risk on purchase.
We do work directly with the brands, and we share the risk with them, is, I guess, so there's a middle ground there. But what's most encouraging for us about this industry is that the brands understand it. Vivienne Westwood understands that she needs to reach now a younger 26-year-old girl or 30-year-old woman who she wouldn't have access to at the moment, because she doesn't go into Harrods or Selfridges usually all the time. And so the brands and designers being open to this sort of a model and engaging with us is a clear sign that they understand that they need to sort of diversify.
What is an example of a cost of a rental of a $1,000 dress? Is the rental related to the cost of the dress?
Yeah, it's broadly between 10 and 15% of the retail price, which is sort of the sweet spot where I think women feel like they're buying an experience and they're able to experience a designer without having to actually, you know, break the bank, basically. And you'll see that a lot of women then start discovering and building loyalties, which is quite a big deal in fashion. Women will very quickly build loyalties to certain designers because they understand that, you know, this designer gets me, I like their fits, I like their cut. And then when she's still going to want to own this brand And so at some point, she's still going to go and buy a temple dress when she's going to be able to.
Yeah, but prior to that, she can rent the dress. Which side of the market is more challenging for you in terms of getting the supply in or getting the demand in for your dress?
It's a journey at different points. It was very hard initially to get the designer relationships in, but there's a certain snowball effect about suppliers. Like you'll know in fashion, we're all herds and we want to do what everybody else is doing with designer labels. And I think we found the early 5 were difficult and the next 20 were really easy. And now it's really, I mean, you know, once you have those relationships, then it's really about the other side and customers, and we're doing exactly what everybody else is talking about, experimenting with different customer acquisition strategies and seeing what's working.
When we met Andreas the first time, he goes to us, you guys aren't in the fashion industry, you guys are in the clothing industry. And we tend to agree, because men, and most men, don't shop. They hate shopping, and they're not fashionistas, and they're not there to find, you know, what's the next cool this or that, or what color's in. Most men couldn't care less. So we're trying to attack that portion of the market, the men that don't shop. So, okay, don't get me wrong, obviously there's men out there that care about fashion, but the vast majority of men don't. And so we're trying to find a way to clothe those men, basically. So at the moment we've started off with the basics. It's based on a subscription model for socks, boxers, t-shirts, all the basic things that men need to wear that don't have the time or energy or effort or couldn't care less to buy. Stuff that you get for Christmas and your mum buys you and those kind of things. So kind of like make your mum proud and get your own boxes sorted. So that's what we're starting off with, and you know, we'll grow and hopefully progress to providing customers with other sorts of items as well.
Okay, perhaps we could go more specifically onto each platform just for 2 minutes each, I guess, for each of the platforms now that we have gone over time. So we'll start with Nuji. This is my profile on Nuji, and I've also added Vanity Fair's take on Michael Jackson alongside the 2 bags that I like and a picture of a woman swimming. So my question is about noise. I think when you started as a bookmarking site, it was an exciting way to collect all the graphics that I liked. And now you're shifting more to stores. So is there a lot of noise that you have to clear up, and how do you deal with it?
So we haven't had as much of a problem as we thought we could have. People have mostly just tagged clothing from stores, but you're right, there can be some noise on there, and that's why it's important for us to shift to more of this store strategy and a product feed strategy. So basically, you know, we have these thousands of stores in there, and if we can get product feeds plugged straight into our platform, then it's not just user generated, and we can have extremely high quality product data within our platform. So, you know, if you have these 300,000 products with very high quality data, it becomes a really interesting place for you to come to shop, because there's not many stores on the internet, if any, that have that many products and that many stores to shop from. So yeah, that's definitely a direction that we're going in.
Does it get lost with all the images that are bookmarked alongside?
No, because we have this absolute focus just on shopping, I think that's one of the big differences between us and Pinterest. You know, if you look at Pinterest, they push videos just as much as baby pictures or, you know, any of these things. They're not focused on shopping at all. That may change at some point. They don't have the stores like we do either, but we are absolutely focused on just shopping, so that when people come to Nuji, they know what they're there to get. And not only that, but it gives us a lot of opportunities product-wise to do some really interesting things with Nuji that platforms like the Fancy or Pinterest could never do, like this loyalty thing, for example. So
I think what you mentioned before about a walled garden for buying is a very important concept.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. And if you think about what Facebook's trying to do, they're trying to create a walled garden for the internet, and it's kind of working. It's really starting to happen, and I think that there's going to be other walled gardens in the future. And one of those things that's what we're trying to do is create a walled garden for shopping. And you know, with 20,000 stores in our platform, we've got a good shot at doing it. So, you know, and I think from a user's perspective, that's really convenient, because instead of me going to multiple different stores, johnlewis.com, you know, all these different stores, I can come to Nuji, shop at whatever stores I like, with thousands of different products, and I never have to leave the site. And then the whole time I'm earning points towards the things that I like. So really what this is becoming is a bit like a shopping mall, but online, which is pretty interesting, I think.
But right now the buy button leads me to the other website at the moment.
Yes, it does. It does. I won't say anything else.
You won't say anything more about it. Okay. Let's go to LOOKK. This is one of my friend's profiles. I've recommended her to put her portfolio onto LOOKK, and I've liked a few dresses. And I think we talked a bit about this, about designers to get feedback, and I can like different pieces, and even separate on the same picture have two different likes. I can like just the blouse and not the skirt, and vice versa. Are there any more developments in how I can discover more designers rather than just through a list of alphabetical order? Like, are there new developments in this?
So, like, for the context, what we try to do is like we try to untackle this segment of the market, like emerging fashion. And as I said before, like if you like really slice and dice it down, like every area has like very specific needs, and we try to cater to those specific needs of like young labels who like start to get to market. And one of the things we try to provide is, for example, ways that they get, like we basically sell to them ways to get attention and ways to get sales. And for example, the voting and everything else is basically ways to get feedback and connections to the user. And what's working quite successfully currently is that we build up fan bases around those users. For example, like that you become a fan, like as you are currently following this designer. And what we are currently working on is basically tools that followers basically become promoters of those designers, because usually they are highly committed to these young labels, and help them reach to a larger audience than they could before. And we do this, for example, now we are launching online pop-up stores for young designers that they actually can sell specific to their specific needs in their industry. Because as an emerging designer, you cannot sell all year long. You have specific times where you can like get pre-orders, specific times where you can like sell, and specific times where you can like do like sample sales, as she said before. And this is like very niche and very focused, but helping those people in a career. And we're speaking of like a segment like of designers who are spending thousands of euros. I guess you're like your friend as well, like thousands of euros each month on their career. They have like PR agencies, showrooms. They have they go to trade fairs, like a highly okay trade fair in Paris. The list price of a booth, which is like at this corner, costs up to 5,000 euros. So what we're trying to do is we try to bring better tools to these people to actually break into the market and make basically this kind of fashion in the market more accessible.
So how does your pop-up store work on your website?
What we are doing is we try to create, like a designer launches a campaign, which is, for example, around new collection, or which is around special pieces he made for us, or it's about samples. And we basically ask his followers to promote him as well. And it's very similar to all these game dynamics you see with sales sites, like with Fab and all these kind of things. And basically try to gamify that those followers become more supporters and more promoters than they would be naturally be. Because there's a lot of energy around those designers usually, which you can use for that.
Within LOOKK, right?
Yes, it's exactly, yeah.
So this is the email I got after taking the quiz. So I am a classic, but it doesn't say. So I am one of the 6 product categories, personality types. And now my showroom is ready, and I can go shop in my showroom. And I think what I like about this is firstly the personalization, although not really, but and then the reduction of choice. I think there is a lot of products out there at the moment, and the idea that Stylistpick becomes a curator of sorts to reduce the choices I have somehow is quite valuable. And what do you have to say about that?
Well, that's exactly what we're trying to do. So it's all about edited choice. Yeah. So edited by trusted curators who have fashion authority to provide advice to you and to curate a selection down to make it just much more accessible and digestible to you as a consumer. So again, what we're adding is a lot of simplicity, adding it with quite kind of an aspirational tone of voice and brand around it, but at a very democratic price point of $39.95. So the idea is really that we bring a very high-end, luxurious brand experience. So also with regards how products arrive with our customers, it's very Net-a-Porter-like. So it all comes in a beautiful bag, a ribbon around your shoebox, a free gift, everything, lots of wrapping paper, and things like that. So we feel that that is a huge part of our of our high repeat order rate, so where customers really like our service. So it's really a monthly treat I give to myself as a consumer, and we see all of that works. And for us, that's much easier to create actually online than it would be with a retailer who has hundreds of stores to create a brand experience. For us, it's a website and it's packaging, and obviously great value for money, good product.
Yeah.
So
you mentioned before that Stylistpick sits in the center of social media, entertainment, and e-commerce, and I thought that was a really nice description of what you do.
So I mentioned before, I think why our quiz converts so well, because it's entertainment. It's just fun to do. Right. And that essentially, and also if you look at our customer acquisition channels, they're very social. So Facebook is roughly a third of our traffic is coming from there. So that just requires fundamentally a different approach to how to convert these kind of users, because they're in a different state of mind. They're not Google search customers. And so there are very few businesses we mentioned, Net-a-Porter, ASOS, they're all full e-commerce models. So they geared towards Google and channels like that. And so we have a different engagement process, but then again need to monetize them. So once we got them, we are able, because we do what we do, have relatively low customer acquisition costs and can monetize them with targeted offers. And other social channels is of course that we work with a lot of celebrities. So if you think of what social media really has done, obviously there's sharing, but the other thing, maybe kind of continuing on the first panel, it gives powers to publishers who are influencers. So who are that? That could be a big blogger, it can be a big magazine, but it can also be celebrity. And so we are really focusing on that celebrity angle, and in a way give celebrities a tool to monetize their follower base. So I think that's why we sit so nicely in the middle of that.
Yes. So you mentioned previously about managing inventory on consignment to create that trust. Perhaps you could say more about that in light of your platform.
Sure. I mean, it's sort of was fairly basic from our point. When we looked at this market and we looked at what the opportunity was going to be to build a secondary marketplace at the luxury end, what was the key driver for our sellers was a hassle-free selling experience. And when you're asking them, when you've got buyers who are spending sort of on average £200 plus a go, you need to be able to offer them an experience that sort of replicates that online luxury experience in terms of presentation, in terms of when you're talking about pre-owned, a layer of quality control, a layer of managing pricing. Pricing in e-commerce and pricing at this end of the market is really, really key, and that's something that we can bring that individual sellers can't bring. And in terms of packaging and returns and the whole experience. So we built what's kind of a hybrid marketplace retail model, whereby we are connecting buyers and sellers. We're doing it on consignment, but we are physically taking the stock in order to address the seller problem with eBay and the buyer kind of comfort level, which we've seen with some of the other sort of dropship sites, is that you need to be able to offer as close to an experience as Felix said, with the nice glossy packaging, with the ability to return something if it's not right. So, I mean, that was our rationale for building our model the way we did, and I think it's a key part of our positioning.
How do you think you're going to manage scaling internationally if you are dealing with the product itself?
I mean, the way kind of other online retailers do. I mean, we've built an economic model that sort of replicates that of a marketplace more closely to a direct retailer, which gives us a level of flexibility. We're always going to have a level of stock risk, given that we bear the inbound cost and that we do the photography. But it's a really important part of supporting, say, the higher resale values on our platform. So we're still very early days. I mean, we're 3 months in, but I mean, anecdotally, we have a higher resale value on our platform than for similar items or the same items on eBay. So because we can support that higher resale value for the sellers, it's because of the positioning and what we can provide to the buyers. So scaling internationally is just about having lean, well-working processes in place, and yes, buying space, and that's renting big space, and that's the nature of what we do.
Ben, would you kindly share your perspective on what the investment is like in the fashion space?
You can answer any questions. How about that? I think it's Shaheen. Yes.
Before I joined Metail, I previously worked at Atomico Ventures, which is another VC in London, and lots of the VC houses in London are talking about innovating the VC model, which is broken in inverted commas because the industry loses money in general, on average. Some big winners, of course. Now, in my opinion, over the last few years, there's only been Rocket Internet that have substantially innovated in venture capital, and they're able to take a business model from the States, like Felix has done, but they aggressively fund it and push out to about 20 countries, 20 markets within a couple of months. 1 second. My question is, is this the future model of venture capital, and do you think it helps profits the venture capitals and the entrepreneurs?
Thesis that the venture capital model is broken. So maybe I first answer on Rocket. I think Rocket's success is based, as any company, on its founders. Yeah, so it's based on the Samba brothers. They're incredible, inhuman executioners. All about operational excellence, and that is very hard to replicate by anyone. So I think great business model, but I think it's very hard to, on that scale, replicate it. And they're company builders, they're entrepreneurs, they're not investors. So I think that's just they're not VCs. And on the VC business model being broken, I think the challenge is that measured on returns, a European VC has to compete with a US VC, and that fundamentally is unfair given the characteristics of the market. And so I think the issue is that the incentive structure a partner has in a VC fund, they need huge exits. So first thing, one of the first things Ben said, needs to be a huge market, right? Because even in theory, it needs to be a huge business. Yeah. So, to be realistic, a lot of businesses, can have a 50 million, 100 million in a good case scenario exit, but that might not even be interesting for a VC. But that seems, so I think there are a lot of well-proportionate, realistic businesses, which are great, profitable, unit economics work, but the big vision isn't there, and they don't get funding. They're not interesting for a VC, and these, hyper-abstract, like shoot-for-the-moon businesses, which, have that big vision, but, which depend on so many little things coming together, are super hot and get all the attention. So that, I think, is fundamentally flawed when I look at the VC business model.
Mural is starting a fashion incubator, and perhaps you can tell everyone about that.
We are currently setting up an incubator in Paris for both fashion designers and fashion startups. And the idea is to really strengthen the interactions between all the startups that we've seen here and designers. The important point is that when you look at the fashion value chain, at the start you have a designer with a vision, with an idea, and at the other hand you have a consumer looking for a special experience. And in between you have many processes, and what I can see is that many ideas are will probably ease the designer works to show their vision, to express themselves, and to have an audience and then with all the tools to improve all their processes, and so to become less risky, because there is a common view that the creative industry is really risky, and I think that we're going the right way with all those innovations, because you can test your designs, and you can even for a consumer, if you see something that looks really great, but you know that you won't wear it 20 times, then you have now a more liquid secondary market. So it will become less risky for all the industry, and I think it's something that we want to help to develop by putting together in our incubator both designers and startups.
I think it's an interesting idea to bring designers and entrepreneurs together in one space. Hopefully some magic dust occurs during that time. Are you starting in London sometime soon?
First in Paris, and then we would like to extend also the concept here in London.
So all fashion startups take note and sign up when it starts in London. So finally, thank you so much to all our sponsors, Eden, Forward, Zuneta, and thank you so much for staying till the end. We really appreciate it. There's a bit more food outside. Please clear it up and finish it up before you go and get another drink. Thank you. Hope you learned something.